Hi, this is Michelle, the Creative Director of SynergyIQ. Welcome to the car, the conversations in the car about culture, leadership, and all of those kind of things. I was talking with a colleague of mine who is from a HR background. As you probably be aware, that was my previous life was in human resources before I transitioned into owning my own business. Interestingly, when I was in human resources, the reality is that I wore a title called manager or senior manager of human resources or people and culture, whatever the title might be this time around or at this point in time. But let's just say it's HR. The reality was I didn't do a lot of the traditional HR work that most people would recognize. The work that I did do was in strategy and was in workforce development, organizational development, and also culture and leadership. This has always been my passion area. This is why I started the business in this field. The interesting thing I find is that although I did come from a HR role in this space, there is an assumption that culture and leadership sit with HR. And I want to sort of break that assumption down a little bit, because I don't believe that the assumption is actually correct. And I think that it's actually detrimental to the health of a business in making that assumption. Now, let me break that down a little bit. Your HR manager, particularly in smaller businesses, is generally someone who works across a general field. And that means that they take care of things like hiring people, they take care of the performance structures, they'll put in policies and procedures, and they manage the legalities of the employment experience, generally from beginning to end. When they're in a smaller business, they tend to take on things like induction, they'll tend to take on things like training programs and training plans, and they'll do all sorts of really interesting things. The reality is not all HR managers are good at all elements of the employee experience, and that the HR skill set is specifically related to the employment of people. It's not necessarily a skill set that translates to business improvement or culture redesign. Now, this is probably going to baffle a few people, because many people believe that culture is a people issue, and therefore if it's a people issue, it sits with human resources. And that can be true if you're talking purely about the behavioral element of culture, if the behavioral element or the training element of leadership, then it could possibly sit with the human resources practitioner. The thing is, your human resources practitioner are generally very skilled in the area and the art of the employee employment experience. That's what's taught in the universities. That's what's taught when you go off and do courses in human resources. What's not generally taught in an extensive way is organizational development and change. They're touched on in these courses, and so they're touched on. They are touched on in these courses, and believe me, I know, because I've done all of the courses. Not all of the courses, that's not true. So they're touched on during these courses. And look, I've done qualifications in human resources myself, and I've spoken to a great number of human resources professionals, so I feel like I've got a good understanding and can speak on this subject. The reality is that culture transformation, leadership development, change management are a different skill set than human resources. And I actually really want human resource professionals to know that that is actually okay. That the skill set of human resources practitioners that's in the employment of humans into the business and making sure that they are employed in the right way, that their performance occurs in the right way, that their managers are helped when they need to be helped. That is actually an important function and skill set that is required within business. There is no need to justify the human resources profession by adding in things like strategy or growth, change management, culture redesign, those sort of things, unless your HR manager absolutely drives this approach and change, and they do have the skill set to enable it to happen, then there's no problem in saying that is not my skill set. That actually what I'm really great at is this thing over here. Actually what I love to do is make sure that this is done. And get somebody else to do the culture redesign. Get somebody else to do the training plans. Get somebody else to coach the leaders in leadership. That's actually okay, because those people can be in partnership with the HR practitioner to ensure that the employment experience is actually set up to support the new culture, to support the leadership outcomes. I think the difficulty is, and the problem is, that I see so regularly is that, one, the assumption is made that human resources practitioners are going to be automatically good at changing culture. They're going to be automatically good at coaching, and they're going to be automatically good at learning and development or training, just because HR is a people field. This is not necessarily so. It's like saying an accountant is going to be automatically good at looking at the strategic growth of a business. That's not true. Some accountants are brilliant at financial accounting, or they're brilliant at tax accounting, or they're brilliant at some other kind of accounting, but they might not necessarily be good at this long-term strategic needs of a business. That's okay. Like, why do we continue to try and press people into a skill set that is not their natural strength? Why do we continue to do that? Because when we continue to do that, we will always get a lesser outcome, because we undervalue the skill set that that person actually has and try to push them into something that they're not natural at, and therefore you get a lesser result, which is not meaningful for that person either. So I really want to say to managers and leaders of businesses to not assume that your culture will change by allocating a change program to your HR department. And I also want to say to HR practitioners, don't assume that just because you're provided with a program that says please change our culture, that it actually is your job to do that. If you're not skilled in that area and have no interest in that area, then by all means say that. Let's be honest with the skill sets that we have. I've met some extraordinary HR managers that are becoming completely overwhelmed with trying to take on a change change management and culture redesign role that they're just not great at. But what they are great at is managing the employment experience. So why not do that? Why not be valued for the skill set that you're really great at and bring somebody else in to do the things that you're not? We have to get better at recognizing when we're great at something and when we're not great at something, and that business overall is a team approach. It's not just up to one person to take on absolutely everything. And just because it has to do with people doesn't make it HR's role. Like just because it has to do with numbers doesn't make it finance role. We really need to get much better and much cleverer in the way in which we work together to create amazing businesses. This conversation in the car is a lot longer than my normal conversations in the car, but you know, this is something that I'm extraordinarily passionate about because one, my passion area absolutely is culture redesign, and I look at it from a very holistic business focus, not just a people focus. And although I came from a HR background, I look at culture and leadership as a business function, not as a people function. And because I come from a HR background, I know a lot of HR people that are really, really struggling to distinguish themselves as HR practitioners and feel that they should and have to be good at change management and culture as well, but it's not necessarily their skill set. So I really am passionate about this area and making sure that we do the things we need to be doing in the area we need to be doing them, and we need to be working together to get better results for business. This is Michelle Holland. I am from SynergyIQ, your transformation partners.